Okay, we'll go ahead and call the regular meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission for Monday, August 5th, 2019 at 7:35 p.m. Let the record show that all members are present except for Troy Pradia. We have one item on the consent agenda tonight, consideration, possible action, approval of minutes, excused absence. Anybody wish to remove this item from the consent agenda? Hearing none, do I hear a motion for approval of the consent agenda?
So move.
I have a motion and a second from Laney. All in favor, signify by raising your right hand. Motion passes 6-0. Moving on to item 3, new business. Letter A, consideration possible action, variance from the 3-to-1 front to depth ratio, VARP 19-00016. It's a request of Randy McLendon, the applicant, on behalf of Brad Crain, owner, for approval of variance permitted in section 2.2.5.2A4 of the Unified Development Code number 2000T to increase the maximum lot depth to width ratio from 3-to-1 to a ratio of 3.13-to-1 to allow for platting of a lot described below. This general location is 3812 Buckholt Street. Do I hear a motion for approval?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Staff report.
This item is basically to, if approved, it would allow the platting of 2 lots through the residential replat lot process. The variance requested is from the 3-to-1 depth to width ratio, and this request does meet the criteria of approval found in the UDC for planning and zoning variances. This next slide shows the area outlined in red is the area that is covered by the replat, which is the next item on the agenda, but the item outlined in blue with the blue lines is one of the lots that will require a variance from the 3-to-1 depth to width ratio. This next slide shows the configuration of the proposed lots that would be in the replat after this variance request. Again, staff recommends approval of this variance request, and that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Do commissioners have any questions or comments for staff or the applicant? Hearing none, we have a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. Motion passes 6-0. Moving on to letter B, consideration and possible action, replat of Crain Treadwell replat, plat 19-00059. This is a request of Randy McLendon, the applicant, on behalf of Brad Crain, owner, approval of a replat of Crain Treadwell replat, creating 2 lots on 4.482 acres of land located on the west corner of Buckholt Road and Westfield Lane. This is the west corner of Buckholt Road and Westfield Lane. Do I hear a motion for approval?
So move.
I have a motion and a second from Laney. Staff report.
This item is a residential replat that will create 2 lots zoned R1 single family. This requested replat does meet the requirements in the code conformance table, and we had just received approval of the variance from the 3-to-1 depth to width ratio, which this replat would require. Again, staff recommends approval of the replat of the Crain Treadwell replat based on the replat meeting the conditions of approval for a replat in the UDC, and also the variance had been granted for lot 2 from the 3-to-1 depth to width ratio. Again, this is a map showing all of the property under review for the residential replat, and this final slide shows the configuration of the 2 proposed lots. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Do the commissioners have any questions or comments for staff?
Chair Tunstall, before you take action on this, as it's a replat, it is going to require a opportunity for anybody in the public to speak on the issue.
Okay. For the matter of record, is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak for or against this item? For the second time, for the record, is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak for or against this item? Okay, for the third and final time, is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak for or against this item? Hearing none, is there any further comment from staff or the commission?
No, sir.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the table. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. Motion passes 6-0. Thank you. Moving on to item C, consideration possible action, approval of an irregular shaped lot to allow replatting of a property. This is VARP 19-00014. This is a request by Rudy Sandoval, the applicant on behalf of Pearland Self Storage Ltd. for approval of variance permitted in section 2.6.1.1B1 of the Unified Development Code, Ordinance Number 2000T, to allow approval for the creation of a irregularly shaped lot. The general location of this is 3200 Kirby Drive. Do I hear a motion for approval?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Staff report.
Basically, this item is located on the 3200 block of Kirby Drive, is intended to create two lots out of one existing lot. Staff recommends approval of the requested variance because this request meets the criteria for approval found in the UDC. This slide shows the site under review outlined in red. There is an existing self-storage facility located in the northern portion of the property, and the undeveloped portion of the property is the reason for this variance request, in which that lot will be or that part of the property will be platted as a separate lot if this variance is approved. This slide shows the two proposed lots that would be created from a replat should this variance be approved, and staff recommends approval of this variance. That concludes my presentation.
Are there any questions for staff? I don't.
This is a CUP property. We did, whenever they came through and did the storage building.
Correct.
We had
Mini
public
storage
hearings and-
to the north received a conditional use permit. This request, though, is to carve out a lot from that lot.
So it seems to me, my opinion of the first use was I was on the line for that one. Was the intent to expand the storage or for additional use on this property?
This will be a commercial use, additional commercial use.
And the size of the property that will be carved out is 4 acres? Or is that?
The total lot is 3.8. I believe the proposed is just over a half acre. Mr. Mueller, if you...
Alan Mueller, I am not Rudy Sandoval, but I'm helping with this project. It's about 1.47 acres is the southern piece that's being split. So this was just, this was one large parcel that was left, after Kirby Drive was built. And so it was acquired by the mini storage. They built what they were going to build, and now they're desiring to sell off the balance of the property. And in order to do that, it has to be replatted so that it's a separate lot.
This one require public?
Because it's a variance, yes, sir, it should require a chance for the public to weigh in on it. And then the following item is a replat. And in light of that, it would also require a chance for the public to weigh in on it.
Okay, so is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak for or against this item? Second time, is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak for or against this item? And for the third time, for the purpose of the record, is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak for or against this item? Okay, hearing none, we'll take the commissioner's questions and comments for staff. Any?
I don't have any comment.
I can't say that I support this one. I'll be a no.
It doesn't seem like there's much space. Is there, whatever they're going to build, is there going to be room to park? Is there?
So just full background. So we went to the ZBA last Thursday for a rear yard setback that got denied. That was going to be about an 7,100 square foot building. And since that was denied, what he's looking at now is probably more like a 3,000 square foot building. So that's the size that's needed in order to balance the parking. So the building will probably be somewhere in the 3,000 square foot with parking.
And to follow up on that, this property fits the minimum zoning size category. So there's enough land to build something on it. You're only here today because it started out as an irregularly shaped lot. Now you would be creating two irregularly shaped lot. The definition of irregularly shaped being not a square. So it's just that side of the lot that's making it a parallelogram and kind of slanted there to the southwest that has them here tonight. But it already has that shape. It just happens to be larger. Yeah.
Any further comments? I have a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed? Motion passes 5-1. Moving on to item D, consideration and possible action, replat of Kirby Commercial Center 2, plat 19-00058. This is a request of Rudy Sandoval, the applicant, on behalf of Pearland Self Storage Ltd, owner, for approval of a replat of Kirby Commercial Center 2, creating two non-residential lots on 3.8662 acres of land at 3200 Kirby Drive. I hear a motion for approval.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. And a staff report.
This proposed replat, the proposed lot 1 will be 2.3877 acres in size. The proposed lot 2 will be 1.4785 acres in size, conforming to the GB General Business Zoning District. The plat meets the code conformance table criteria. The only exception was that a planning and zoning variance was needed in order to allow the creation of the two irregular shaped lots. Staff recommends approval of the replat of Kirby Commercial Center. This map shows again shows the location of the applicant's property on Kirby, and this slide shows the two proposed lots. And in conclusion, staff is recommending approval of this replat.
We do need public comments, correct? So I'll call for those now. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak for or against this item? Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak for or against this item? For the third time for the record, is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak for or against this item? Hearing none, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Is there further discussion or staff comments?
No, sir.
Okay, hearing none. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. Motion passes 6-0. Moving on to item E. sure I'm on the right one. Consideration possible action variance to create an irregularly shaped lot and flag lot with double frontage VARP 19-00015. This is a request by David White of Tetra Surveys, the applicant on behalf of 4308 Rice LLC owner for approval of a variance permitted in section 2.6.1.1B1 of the Unified Development Code, ordinance number 2000T. Sections of requirements from the 14.2 C and E of the UDC to allow approval of the creation of a regularly shaped flag lot with double frontage. This is at 4418 Halleck Road. Do I hear a motion for approval? Have a motion and a second. Staff report.
This item is a request for the approval of a variance that would allow the creation of two lots in the Rice Dryer plan development. Both of the lots in question would meet the minimum area requirements for that particular plan development. Staff does recommend approval of the requested variance because it meets the criteria for approval for a variance request. This slide shows the applicant's property is located along the east side of the railroad tracks and stretches from Halleck Road to Rice Dryer Road. This final slide shows the configuration of the two proposed lots that this variance covers. The proposed lot 2 is a 1 acre lot, and then the proposed larger lot is the remainder acreage of the property. The remainder acreage also includes a small flagpole that connects to Halleck Road to the north. Staff recommends approval of this variance request, and that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Commissioners have any questions or comments?
Is the flag or the flagpole portion big enough for a driveway, or is this more for utilities, drainage, those types of applications?
It's my understanding it's more for utility type applications. Of course, however, both properties will be next to cul-de-sac bulbs.
It just looks really thin. So
Yes,
I know
sir.
that on our
It
previous
is.
flag lot properties, we always usually the pole portion is much larger. So
I think Lot 1, Block 1 would actually take all of its access from the Rice Dryer Road, whereas the flag or the pole is for that utility easement or drainage easement as discussed. And I don't think there's any intention for public, for any driveways to be at that location. And I think engineering had reviewed that to verify that, because it wouldn't meet driveway separations if they were attempting to do so. So they would deny any such request and make them go on the southern bulb.
okay, I was just wondering because I couldn't figure out why you would have it when it's not. I mean, that's the only thing I could think of. Okay.
And again, because it's a variant, and you would be changing the UDC or changing this, the rules as they're written, you would require public comment on this item.
Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak for or against this item? Okay. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak for or against this item? For the third and final time, is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak for or against this item? Hearing none, the commissioners have any questions or comments on this item? All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. Motion passes 6-0. Moving on to item F, consideration possible action replat of a portion of Lot 1, Block 1 of Rice Dryer Commerce Park, Plat 19-00056. This is a request of David White of Tetra Surveys, the applicant on behalf of 4308 Rice LLC, owner for approval of a replat of portion of Lot 1, Block 1 of Rice Dryer Commerce Park, creating two lots on 3.8185 acres of land located at 4488 Halleck Road. Do I hear a motion for approval?
Second.
I have a motion and a second from Mary. Let's have staff report.
Yes, sir. Again, this is the replat that is related to the previous variance that was approved for the creation of an irregular shaped double frontage flag lot. On this replat, the application had met all of the code conformance criteria except for the TIA worksheet, which was needed. And staff at the time this staff report went to press had recommended a condition of approval that a TIA worksheet be submitted. However, that TIA worksheet has since been submitted and forwarded to the engineering department. Part of the issue with a replat is that this property had recently been recorded as a final plat as Lot 1, Block 1, and all of the, there had been previous drainage and traffic studies done, and engineering just needed a TIA worksheet to account for that new 1 acre lot that would be created from this plat. Again, the property is located along the east side of the railroad tracks between Halleck Road and Rice Dryer Road. And this shows the configuration of the proposed lots. And staff is changing its recommendation to approval since we have received the TIA worksheet, which was a condition for approval in the staff report. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and call for public comment. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak for or against this item? Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak for or against this item? And for the final time, is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak for or against this item? Hearing none, do the commissioners have any questions or comments for staff? None? I have a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. Motion passes 6-0. Moving on to item G. Staff is item G still?
This item G, the approval of the final plat of Riverstone Ranch at Clear Creek, Section 11. Last week, staff had received a written request that this item be withdrawn, and this was received after this item had gone to press to be presented to the Planning and Zoning Commission.
So what are our options tonight?
In light of the application being withdrawn, and because we've told members of the public that the application was withdrawn who had shown up to speak tonight, I recommend passing on this and moving on to item H.
Okay, we'll move on to item H. Consideration and possible action, zone change application number zone 19-00015. This is a request of Michael C. Elliott, independent executor, applicant, and owner for approval of a zone change from suburban residential 12, district SR 12 to light industrial M1 on approximately 12.89 acres of land. General location is 1706 and 1722 Roy Road. Do I hear a motion for approval?
Second.
I have a motion and a second from Thomas. We have, this was previously heard in our joint meeting with council. Is the applicant in the room? Hearing not, do I have staff report?
The only thing I'd like to add about this zone change request was that part of the history, which was included in the packet, was that this same property had previously been M1 before the Unified Development Code was passed. So there is some history to the property holding a light industrial classification. Of course, the future land plan today does show that it's intended for residential development, and McCard is coming across the north portion of the property. So that will affect the future developability of the property. So keep those two things in mind when you are making your decision tonight.
I appreciate that. One of the lots does it have a home on it today?
Correct.
Is that home occupied?
I believe it is not. There may be some.
Yeah, there may be some activity. When I was there to look at the sign, I think there's some cars in front of that house. So it's possible it's occupied. Just don't know what it is.
Well, to quote an old council member, Scott Sherman, I wish the applicant was here to speak to answer our questions, but he's not. And that I don't like that. And did you hear from the applicant that there was a reason they couldn't be here, or send a representative, or?
We sent them a notice that, here was their staff report, and I have not heard anything since.
I have no further comments. I'll
Just wonder if you want to update them that a portion of that property is going through.
If we were going to discuss the McCard going across the top, and as you can see on your map, it shows the right-of-way to be acquired.
I have no further questions. I'll be a no on this one.
I have one question. Is the M1 property in use now?
Yes, there's a crane business located on the property.
Thank you.
So by it holding the SR12 zoning district, it was legally established during M1. It then changed and holds a non-conforming status. If it received an M1 by council action, it would go back to majority conforming. The setbacks may be a little different from pre-UDC to post or to current standards, but at least the use would be in conformance.
But leaving the property zoned now would prevent that M1 use that was legally established then from expanding and impacting on all the future residential that the property all around it is currently zoned for?
Correct. And if it were to change to a different use, it would have to go before the Zoning Board of Adjustment to change non-conforming uses.
Any further questions, Mary? Questions? Don't be scared. Jump in there.
My question is, changing this zoning, what does that do to the adjacent zone for future use? Nothing.
Changing the zoning doesn't change the future use because we're only talking about the zoning of the properties in red here. If it were to receive the M1 classification, they would have to provide buffers to any land that is either used for residential use or zoned residentially due to the M1 classification.
I will also add to that yes, the existing use would be legally conforming use if this property is changed to M1, but also it opens it up for any other use that would be allowed in the industrial district. So if they tear this building down, assuming that they get the M1, they can build it for any other any use that will be allowed in industrial district.
M1's pretty heavy. Can you go back to the zoning map?
No, the M1 is the light industrial.
Compared to residential, it's...
Yeah, that's right.
There's a significant amount of uses that are allowed.
So if you're looking at SR12 here and the other residential, it would create an island of M1 in the middle of primarily SR12 and non-conforming uses.
Yes, any industrial use, any manufacturer use will be allowed by right at that point.
And cranes and hoists are M1?
Correct.
Yes, thank you.
Further questions?
Nope.
All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed? Motion's denied 0-6. Moving on to item I. Consideration and possible action, zone change application number zone 19-00016. This is a request of Alan Mueller, applicant on behalf of G-Tech Development, represented by Andy Grieve, owner, for approval of a zoning change from single-family residential R3 to general business GB on approximately 0.89 acres. This is at 2519 Broadway Street. Do I hear a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
A motion, a second. This item was previously heard in our joint meeting. Staff have anything to add?
Nothing additional.
Commissioners have any comments or questions? I don't have any issue with this one because it's one piece of property that the line just cut in two. I wish that the driveway issue with the gas station wasn't a problem or had been worked out on the gas station approval when it came through. But I believe probably the layout was not tied to the application for the gas station.
And also, it's very difficult to design for people who are going to break the law anyway.
Yeah.
So to me, this is an enforcement issue.
Yeah, and I can't see denying a driveway cut to Country Club
Right.
Drive either,
I agree.
considering the size of the property. I have no issue with this.
I think the driveway issue is something that's going to have to be determined in the future. If you deny him the right for a driveway in there on that stretch of Country Club, almost be taking property, I would think. So I think that's something that have to be worked out with staff.
Any further comment?
No.
Have a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. Motion passes 6-0. Moving on to item J, consideration possible action, zone change application number zone 19-00017. This is a request by Nancy Murphy, applicant and owner, for approval of a plan development PD amendment to amend the base zoning for the Botanical Landscape PD from General Business District GB to General Commercial District GC, and to permit outside storage within the district on approximately 3.00 acres. This is at 6301 Broadway Street. Do I hear a motion for approval?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Item was also previously heard in our joint meeting. Does staff have anything to add or report on?
I think we have discussed the options with the applicant moving forward. So they could, if they decide to basically go with as presented, then the commission can vote on it. Obviously, can table for additional information. However, if they need to change it to straight JC, then we are required to make new notices for the request to the adjacent property owners.
I really don't have an issue going through with this vote. I'm more concerned with the applicant. If they were to want to remove the PD, that would come at an extra cost, I'm assuming, with filing fees and that for a second application, correct?
I think if the case is stable by the commission, they can still work it out through the existing application. They just have to change the application form. But if the commission votes on it and they decide to go back to something different, then they have to come with a new application. They have to pay a new fee.
Does the applicant wish to speak to the commission? Okay, if you don't mind, if you could come up to the microphone and give your name and address for the record. Don't be nervous, you're among friends. Nobody likes to speak in front of a microphone. Imagine that.
My name is Nancy Murphy. My address is 2017 Victoria Court, League City, 77573.
Hi, my name is Mike Marsh. My address is 7915 Mont Glen, Houston, Texas, 77061.
Well, I guess coming into the meeting tonight, we weren't really looking at GC particularly, but we have a better understanding now of just what a GC would provide versus the initial request that we submitted for this meeting. And I think we might be leaning towards going with the GC because of the opportunities that we have with attracting businesses. With the GC, though, we do understand that there would be a conditional use permit that would be required if they wanted outside storage, which is my understanding that there is not an outside storage allowed with the GC zone.
That is correct. So if they move with the GC, straight zoning for GC, a conditional use permit would be required for the outside storage. Cannot be accommodated with the straight GC. So that'll have to be a separate application in the future.
Okay, so tonight, what's on the table is to change the underlying zoning to GC and permit outdoor storage under the PD.
That is correct,
revision.
under the PD.
So that would give the applicant everything they're looking for with the restrictions that are in the current PD.
That is correct.
That's the quickest way to get to the zone change you're after is GC. To remove the PD, if there was anything in the PD that kept you from marketing the property, that would be a concern and also a revision that you might wanted to come to this commission with as part of this. I did not review the entire PD document and the restrictions that were put on this.
It was only one restriction regarding height. That was
It's
it.
the height of
Yeah, it restricts height beyond 300 feet from the front property line to only 20 feet high. So GC typically, just a straight general commercial zoning, allows you height of 45 feet. So if that's what they get, they're allowed to build up to 45 feet. But that restriction was put way back in 2002 to restrict height in the back of the property to 20 feet.
I believe I remember those meetings, and we did have residents show up for that, and that's where that came from. I don't know why they didn't show up this time, but I mean, I'm leaning toward voting on this with the changes as presented because that gives the applicant exactly what they're after. If you don't, we just heard the report on the PD, so there's a height restriction on that, and that's it. And that's I mean, are you okay with voting with the way it is tonight? That's what I would do.
Well, I think the options are vote on it tonight or table it and explore your options a little bit more, and then you can make that decision then.
But it will put the process back a few weeks.
Correct.
How long would it be tabled? Or let's say we came up with a decision by the weekend, how long would it be tabled?
It could come back to this.
I think because we're required to send notices out, so it wouldn't be accomplished within 2 weeks. So we'll have to put it in the next joint public hearing that would be September 11. I'm sorry, September 11, I believe. Oh, September 5th. It'll be September 5th.
Yeah.
Okay, a month from
That's
now.
how long it'll be.
Okay.
I was going to say, if you postpone it and then you decide that you want to go for the straight zoning of GC, it's a new application with new notices. If you postpone it and then you come back and say, we'd like to go as planned, then it would be at the next regular meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission that we would postpone it to, where you could have that vote just on the PD. That would only be their recommendation. It still needs to be approved by city council at two posted meetings. So I don't know what the time is. I see them pulling up the calendars here, and they might be able to better advise that today. But
So if it was postponed to the next planning and zoning meeting, that would be the August 19th meeting.
That's my birthday.
If it's postponed to the next joint public hearing meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission, then it would be the September 9th. Apologize, I got my 5th and my 9th messed around with.
Or
we vote on it.
Or we vote on it as it is.
Yeah. Well, and I appreciate your input, and I apologize if we've taken an extra few minutes here tonight to discuss this. But looking at everything that we have in front of us, I think what we're probably going to do is just to move forward as we've requested and go from there.
Okay.
If there's other time that we're going to be investing here and more fees, then I think it's just probably in our best interest just to move on from here.
Okay.
As requested.
Thank y'all. Yes. So we have any further discussion? A motion and a second on the table. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed? Motion passes 5-1. That's all of them. Moving on to item 4, discussion items, Commissioner Activity Report. None. Our next regular P&Z meeting is August 19th. Let staff know if you can't make it as soon as possible. Staff have anything further?
No, sir.
Okay, hearing none, we'll adjourn at 8:17.